Kenny Omega is coming to Impact Wrestling. Yes, that is the big news coming out of AEW Dynamite last night, in addition to all the other newsworthy things that happened on that show, the arrival of Sting in AEW, the working relationship between AEW and Impact. But the big news as well is that Kenny Omega is coming to Impact Wrestling. Now, why is Kenny Omega on his way to Impact Wrestling? I thought he was signed to AEW. Well, of course he is. But last night on the special Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite, Kenny Omega won the AEW World Championship from previous champion Jon Moxley in the main event. But there was so much more to it than just that. Now, before the match got started, Don Callis, Impact Wrestling Executive Vice President, joined the likes of Jim Ross, Tony Schiavone and Excalibur on commentary. But eventually he made his way to the ring to check on his... well, I guess you would call him a friend from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Don Callis has been a mentor figure to Kenny Omega throughout his career, so he goes to check on him after Kenny Omega took a tough suplex to the floor late in the match. But Don Callis then grabs a microphone. He tells the referee that Kenny Omega is hurt. Jon Moxley blasts Don Callis off the apron. The microphone rolls into the ring. Kenny Omega takes the microphone, hits Jon Moxley with it, hits the one-winged angel, and Kenny Omega is the new AEW World Champion. But it was after the match that got everyone talking. It's got everyone talking and buzzing, especially if you're a fan of Impact Wrestling. After the match, Don Callis grabbed the championship. He helped Kenny Omega run out of Daily's Place, past an angry AEW president Tony Khan, past an angry AEW producer Jerry Lynn, past the All Elite Wrestling roster and into a car. Then you had Alex Marvez on the scene there asking Don Callis and Kenny Omega where they were going, what just happened. Well, the Impact Executive Vice President Don Callis responded to Alex Marvez saying that you'd have to find out Tuesday on Access TV, that being Impact Wrestling. So this relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling is certainly a thing, which means that Kenny Omega is going to be on Impact on Tuesday. Now, we did a video earlier today. We spoke about the working relationship between AEW and Impact Wrestling, what that means, how long it's been in the works for, talent trading, dream matches, how it's beneficial for Impact and AEW. We broke everything down that we know right now, so be sure to check that out. I'll put a link in the video description below. It's on the channel as well. But what I want to talk about briefly in this video is Kenny Omega. How does Kenny Omega fit into this, and how does Kenny Omega come over to Impact Wrestling? What does Kenny Omega do when he comes over to Impact Wrestling? What's the storyline? What's the story that's going to be involved here? First of all, Kenny Omega being on Access TV on Tuesday night for Impact, it is ginormous. I mean, it is absolutely ginormous. It is going to be huge. I mean, I've said this in the video we did about the analysis of the working relationship between AEW and Impact, that I truly believe that Impact will do their biggest rating, I think, ever on Access TV Tuesday night on when Kenny Omega and Don Callis shows up. You have to remember that was arguably the biggest episode of Dynamite ever last night. Certainly the biggest episode of Dynamite of the year. It was a special TV edition, TV special edition of Dynamite. Had a World Championship main event. The first time the AEW World Championship has changed hands on free-to-air television. Right? That happens. And what happens at the end of it? Impact Wrestling get a plug. The cliffhanger isn't to tune into AEW next week. It's to tune into Impact Wrestling on Tuesday on Access TV. It was huge. It's massive for Impact. So what does Kenny Omega do? What does Kenny Omega and Don Callis do when Impact Wrestling goes on the air on Tuesday? Well, I think what we're most likely going to get, obviously we're going to get Don Callis, and I think we're going to get Kenny Omega with the AEW World Championship over his shoulder. We're going to get some form of an explanation as to why Don Callis has sort of taken Kenny Omega with him, why Don Callis has helped Kenny Omega steal the AEW World Championship. Of course, we know the relationship and the history with Don Callis and Kenny Omega. Don Callis was instrumental in helping Chris Jericho come over to New Japan to face Kenny Omega at Wrestle Kingdom 12. Don Callis has been a mentor figure to Kenny Omega throughout the entirety of his career. The connection between Don Callis and Kenny Omega is well known. I'm sure they'll play on that. I'm sure they'll play on him being a mentor figure. And I think the story is here. That Kenny Omega and specifically Don Callis stole the AEW World Championship from All Elite Wrestling. That's what Jim Ross was saying on commentary after the match. He was saying, something stinks. It looks like we've just got jobbed out here. And they were painting Don Callis as this carny, I guess, promoter guy who has just screwed over the promotion. There has been a screw job. We haven't seen a screw job for a while, right? That's what it was meant to play out like. That Kenny Omega has sided with Don Callis and Impact Wrestling, and they've stolen the AEW World Championship, and they're taking it to another promotion. It's all about Impact Wrestling, and they're helping raise up Impact Wrestling. Forget about Tony Khan and John Moxley and all that lot. Omega and Callis have stolen the AEW World Championship. I think the story as well, and we've seen Don Callis actually reference this on social media. He spoke about AEW screwed AEW. He talked about being the invisible hand, manipulating things. And I think the story that they're trying to sort of imply here is that they're playing on reality. They're playing on reality that Tony Khan is the president of AEW. He's been criticized for being, in certain aspects, this billionaire fan, right? He's the head of the company, he's the president and CEO, but ultimately he's a fan. He used to attend ECW pay-per-views back in the day. He attended All In as a fan. And some people have said he's just a glorified mark with deep pockets, essentially. And they're playing off that for this storyline. They're saying that Tony Khan is this billionaire fan, whereas Don Callis is the executive vice president, one of the executive vice presidents of Impact Wrestling, along with Scott D'Amore. And Don Callis, in contrast to Tony Khan being this billionaire fan, Don Callis is the carny. He's an old school pro wrestler. He's all about the promotion, and he's all about backstabbing and underhanded politics and politicking his way into certain situations and manipulating people to get what he wants that benefits him and his company. And that's what they're playing off. They're saying that Don Callis just worked AEW. He worked AEW, he worked Tony Khan, and he took advantage of the situation to ensure that his friend became the world champion. And because his friend became the world champion, he was able to steal a top rival promotion's world championship. It's genius. It's genius. Don Callis took advantage of Tony Khan and All Elite Wrestling. They stole the world championship and one of the top competitors in AEW, and they're bringing it over to Impact Wrestling. That's the story here. And I don't know how this plays out now. Is AEW going to go to war with Impact Wrestling? Is it going to be a case of Don Callis is just a manager for Kenny Omega and there's just a little bit of crossover in Impact Wrestling? I could see that happening. Nevertheless, Tuesday night on Access TV, not only are we getting an explanation from Don Callis as to what happened and why he did it, the invisible hand that he's calling himself, how he manipulated things to get what he wants, but we're also going to see Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega is going to appear on Impact programming with the World Championship. It's absolutely crazy. It's crazy. I mean, you would have never thought that would have happened. Never thought that would have happened. I remember Don Callis came out, I think he did an interview, it might have been a couple of months ago or something like that, and said, you know, if it wasn't for AEW, Kenny Omega would be in Impact Wrestling right now. And everyone laughed at him, said, you're out of your mind. The only thing that was going to tempt Kenny Omega away from New Japan was something like AEW. He wasn't going to go to WWE either. Maybe, who knows, but he wasn't going to go to Impact Wrestling. Lo and behold, the end of 2020, Kenny Omega is going to be in Impact Wrestling. Now, he's still signed with AEW. He's not leaving AEW or anything like that. This is part of the working relationship and working agreement between AEW and Impact, which is very new right now. But it looks to me, if Kenny Omega's making appearances on Impact Wrestling like he's going to be on Tuesday, that opens the possibility. Kenny Omega's going to have a couple of matches in Impact Wrestling, which I can't wait to see. I cannot wait to see. Now, it's led to some people suggesting, could this mean that Kenny Omega could possibly defend the AEW World Championship at Final Resolution for Impact Wrestling? I don't think that's the case. I think it's already been taped. If you watch Ethan Page's vlog on his YouTube channel, you can tell that they actually taped Final Resolution when they did the latest round of tapings last week. So Kenny Omega isn't showing up at Final Resolution as far as I'm aware. Now, again, the same way that Kenny Omega and Don Callis will appear on Impact on Tuesday, they absolutely could cut a promo somewhere, shoot a vignette, and then just edit it into the show. I think that's what they're going to do with Impact on Tuesday. They're going to cut a promo. They'll have taped it somewhere. Maybe it's in Jacksonville. Maybe it's in Canada. Maybe it's even in Nashville. Wherever, they're going to have taped that promo and they're just going to edit it into the programming. I think that's what they're going to do there. So they absolutely could do that at Final Resolution. As far as Kenny Omega defending the AEW World Championship at Final Resolution, I don't think that's going to happen. And Kenny Omega actually competing inside of an Impact Wrestling ring, I think that will happen. That is going to happen at this point. It has to. That's the storyline, right? I don't know if that's going to happen before the start of 2021. I think that's what we're really looking at there. And why is that the case? Well, that's the case because obviously last week when Impact did their Mammoth TV tapings, started on a Saturday, I think finished on a Friday or something like that, 5 or 6 day Mammoth marathon long TV tapings. They taped all of their content for the remainder of 2020 and actually into 2021 to the weekend of the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, which I think is on January 12th or something around that period of time. So unless Kenny Omega was a part of those TV tapings, which I don't think he was, because that would seriously, I mean, Impact would have to go into overdrive to make sure that wasn't leaked out, because look, Impact Wrestling, like any pro wrestling company, has their leaks, right? You hear about things that happens at tapings. The report was at the tapings that they filmed all of the content for 2020 and there was the issue when it came to testing. That all came out through those TV tapings last week. So I would be stunned if Kenny Omega was a part of those TV tapings. On top of that, carrying around the AEW World Championship, I would be absolutely floored if that's the case, that they managed to pull that off without people knowing, without people stooging it off, without people leaking it. It was a genuine surprise last night that Don Callis was the one to cost Jon Moxley the championship, and this relationship exploded between AEW and Impact. So I would have been stunned if Impact managed to pull that off without any leaks. So I don't think Kenny Omega was part of the TV tapings last week. So we're not going to see Kenny Omega, as far as I'm aware, inside of an Impact Wrestling ring for the remainder of the year. Obviously, they could still go to Nashville. They could still go to Skyway Studios, I guess, and just shoot some segments with Kenny Omega inside the Impact Zone. That's not out of the realm of possibility. They can absolutely do that, and maybe that's what they'll do. I think, though, when it comes to his promo on Tuesday, I think Omega and Callis will just appear in a pre-tape promo that they'll edit into the show. Nevertheless, you could have a situation, speaking of Hard to Kill, you could have a situation come Hard to Kill where Kenny Omega defends the AEW World Championship at Hard to Kill in January. Now, that is a possibility. The Hard to Kill pay-per-view will be reasonably live. I think they tape these pay-per-views pretty much the day of or the day before or something like that. Of course, when there is no fans, they don't have any issues about leaking results or fans leaking results or anything like that. So even Bound for Glory, as far as I'm aware, wasn't actually live. I'm not sure. There were things that were pre-taped in there, I think, but elements of it were live. I don't know. Impact's taping schedule and whether or not they're live at the moment, it's actually very difficult to pin down. I think that's on purpose, by the way, but absolutely, are we going to get a Kenny Omega match in Impact Wrestling, or multiple matches? But certainly as well, we're going to get, I think, a Kenny Omega match at Hard to Kill. I think at this point, it feels inevitable, right? He's with Don Callis. They're saying that he's going to appear on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday. It looks like we've got this working relationship between AEW and Impact. Kenny Omega's kind of the guy that goes between all of these promotions because he's also the AAA Mega Champion, isn't he? And he's going to be appearing at Triple Mania later this month. So he's going to be appearing for AAA. He's probably going to be appearing for Impact and AEW as well. Therefore, Impact's next big pay-per-view, in the same way that Triple Mania is AAA's next big pay-per-view, it makes total sense for Kenny Omega to be wrestling at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Who does he face off against? That is a very good question. He could possibly, though, be defending the AEW World Championship at Hard to Kill. How great would that be for Impact Wrestling there, right? That would be absolutely fantastic for them. And it does also raise the question, is Don Callis going to become a regular character going forward in Impact Wrestling? Well, if Kenny Omega is going to be regularly competing in Impact Wrestling, he kind of has to, right? All the reports are saying that going forward in AEW, Don Callis is going to be Kenny Omega's manager. It's going to be a case of, not necessarily that Don Callis is going to be Kenny Omega's mouthpiece. It's a bit like Paul Heyman with Roman Reigns in the sense that it just adds to the overall package. It's like Bobby Heenan with Nick Bockwinkel. This was a good analogy done by Dave Meltzer when he was discussing it on the Wrestling Observer Radio. So I like the pairing of Don Callis and Kenny Omega. It's real. It reflects real life. That would mean to me, though, that Don Callis becomes a regular character going forward in Impact Wrestling. Now, I'm a huge fan of Don Callis' work on commentary. I've been vocal quite a few times on the channel at this point saying I really want him to go back on commentary regularly for Impact because I do think he's one of, if not the best colored commentators out there. I know people disagree with me that. I know people say, oh, that's not the case. You should have Josh Matthews and Matt Stryker on commentary for Impact. They had that a couple of weeks ago. I agree. I think they do a great job as a commentary team for Impact Wrestling. I like Madison Rayne. I'm a fan of Madison Rayne. Obviously, she's a legend. She did great work in the Knockouts division. She's a however many time Knockouts champion. I just don't feel her commentary like I do if it's a Matt Striker or a Don Callis. I think she can be used better and actually do something more with the Knockouts division, even if it's not wrestling every week. Maybe those days are behind her. She hosts a regular talk show segment, Locker Room Talk. I think she could do something different when it comes to Impact Wrestling. I would like to see Don Callis regularly on commentary. If he's going to be Kenny Omega's manager going forward in AEW and therefore Impact, then that isn't the case of getting Don Callis back on commentary. Maybe for these big pay-per-views like Hard to Kill, it's a possibility. I mean, Don Callis started on commentary last night for the main event on Dynamite because he's a well-known and one of the best commentators out there. That was the whole point. That was the way in. So it's going to be interesting to see if he does become a regular character. And again, we blur the lines there of the executive vice president becoming a regular TV character, shades of Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff in the Attitude Era. It's going to be absolutely fascinating there. I think the biggest thing out of all of this is that Impact Wrestling is going to have a star like Kenny Omega appearing on Impact Wrestling on Tuesday. You've got this massive angle that's bled over from AEW Dynamite onto Impact. And most importantly, you're going to have Kenny Omega competing inside of an Impact ring. That is ratings gold for Impact Wrestling. Now, is this going to be their biggest rating on Access TV Tuesday? I think it has to be. There are so many people buzzing about this that are thinking of tuning into Impact when they don't usually tune into Impact. So I'm going to be tuning in, and I tune in every single week, but I'm going to be tuning in and welcoming all these extra people saying, now, get an eye on the product because this is a great product. So it could be Impact's biggest rating. I've seen people saying, is this Impact's biggest signing? Well, it's not a signing in the sense that Kenny Omega is still under contract with AEW. The biggest signing, I suppose, maybe here is this relationship with AEW. If they've signed an agreement of some sorts of AEW, or if it's just a handshake deal, whatever that is, it's the biggest of whatever that is. You know, this is on par when they signed Kurt Angle or Sting back in the day, because Impact Wrestling, it's been in the wilderness for a while. Over the last few years, the product's been fantastic, but it's been a damaged brand, and it's being brought back. And it does, with Kenny Omega coming to Impact Wrestling, it opens up all of these possibilities. If you just look down the Impact roster and think of these people facing off with Kenny Omega in Impact Wrestling, it's incredibly alluring. You've got Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann. I think it's the one that everyone will look at immediately, not because necessarily it's a dream match, but it's the two world champions. You've got the AEW World Champion Kenny Omega, and you've got the Impact World Champion Rich Swann. If you're going to do any form of like an invasion storyline, or if you're going to do any form of Kenny Omega being an addition to Impact Wrestling, but also being the AEW World Champion, holding AEW hostage, what better way to send this storyline over the top than go, you know what, we're going to put 2 world championships on Kenny Omega. Now, I know some people might say, well, that's overkill and it's maybe not necessary. If you're Impact Wrestling, think of it this way. If Kenny Omega is the AEW World Champion and he's appearing regularly on Impact, but also on AEW TV as well, why wouldn't you have the Impact World Championship on Kenny Omega? Think of the exposure it's going to get. Think of the exposure we've seen for the NWA when it comes to the NWA World Women's Championship with first Thunder Rosa and now Serena Deeb. I think it's similar. And I don't know if it'll happen immediately because Rich Swann, you know, he's scheduled to face Chris Bay at Final Resolution. I think he'll probably face Moose at Hard to Kill. That's the way that it's planned. But there is absolutely a possibility, I think, in the future, depending how long this storyline between AEW and Impact Wrestling goes on for and the working relationship, that Kenny Omega, I mean, how amazing would it be if he held the AEW World Championship and the Impact Wrestling World Championship at the same time? It would be truly historic. And I think at this point, that's what this storyline is. It's about history, isn't it? It's about history of things we didn't see coming before. You could also have Kenny Omega versus Moose. I like the dynamic in that one. 2 heels, though. How would that work? Again, the idea, though, that Kenny Omega, he could become a bit of a bout collector here. Imagine he defeated Rich Swann for the Impact World Championship. He defeats Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And he also holds the AEW World Championship. That would be chaos to the nth level, and maybe it would be overkill, but it would be a fascinating storyline to see. And I think something that blurs the lines of reality like that and it tops itself every single week, and he carries around all these championships. He's not only the cleaner now, but he's the golden child of both Impact Wrestling and AEW. I think that would get a lot of people talking. Get a lot of people talking about AEW, and you get a lot of people talking about Impact Wrestling. So let's not rule that out. I know people will say it's overkill. We don't even know really the situation when it comes to Kenny Omega and Impact right now. But anything's a possibility. Anything's a possibility. And other names that I think are a possibility, Kenny Omega versus Chris Bay. Chris Bay's been elevated into that main event scene. You know for a fact Chris Bay would want to face off against Kenny Omega. Think of the match that they could have. Kenny Omega versus a fellow Canadian like Eric Young. I think Eric Young would be a great dynamic. World Class Maniac versus the Cleaner. Kenny Omega versus Ken Shamrock. I know people will say, well, Ken Shamrock, he's 55, he's old, he's over the hill, he's still the world's most dangerous man. I think Shamrock actually, in the last few months in Impact, with this partnership with Sami Callihan, started to build some momentum actually. The character's starting to get interesting. Ken Shamrock has actually said in numerous interviews, he's actually starting to find some momentum, and she's started to feel more comfortable in the ring the first time he's felt like that since the Attitude Era. And I think that does show. He's starting to portray a character that he's comfortable with. He's starting to really knock off some of whatever ring rust he had coming back. He had a lot of it. And that's at the age of 55. I mean, anything's possible. So Kenny Omega versus Ken Shamrock would be fun. And Kenny Omega versus Sami Callihan. I mean, what contrasting personalities you've got. They've got Sami Callihan, who's nuts, and Kenny Omega, who's one of the greatest wrestlers in the world right now. That would be a fun dynamic too. Personally, if I want to see Sami Callihan face anyone from AEW, I want that to be Jon Moxley. I want there to be a CZW reunion, and I want to have Sami Callihan and Jon Moxley face off in just the most brutal of death matches. And you know what? I think it's a possibility, because anything's a possibility now when it comes to this Impact and AEW working relationship. It's fantastic. The only thing I would say is possibly an issue with Kenny Omega going forward in Impact, if he is going to face off against members of the Impact roster, is that there aren't many babyfaces. Right now, there aren't a ton of true top-level babyfaces that Kenny Omega can face off against. There's Rich Swann. I mean, is there any other top-level babyface? Eddie Edwards is, I mean, he's out with an injury, but he's facing Shamrock and Callihan. That's still a thing. So, I don't know. I don't know the situation when it comes to two true babyfaces that can face Kenny Omega right now. A heel, cleaner version of Kenny Omega. I'm not sure. I think you have to look at someone like Rich Swann, because there aren't many true babyfaces there. If you had James Storm back in the mix, I think that would be fun. Is James Storm versus Kenny Omega something I'm fascinated to see in 2020? I don't know. I mean, James Storm looked great when he returned, so it's a possibility. Either way, I've mentioned this before in the video I did earlier today, it's huge. It's absolutely huge for Impact. It really is. It's a massive deal for them. And potentially on Tuesday, I mean, we know that Kenny Omega's coming, but potentially we could have a complete AEW invasion of Impact coming soon. Now, again, I don't think any of the AEW talent was there at the most recent tapings. I just have to feel that that would have got out somehow, some way, unless they filmed all of these scenes in a proper closed set, didn't tell anyone backstage, and only a handful of people knew about it. I think in reality, the appearances we're going to get from Don Callis and Kenny Omega going forward, at least until 2021, will be in promos that have been edited into the show. We could be wrong. They could be filming content now there as we speak. That's not out of the realms of possibility either. If that is the case, maybe we see some more AEW talents come over to Impact over the next couple of weeks. Maybe we see an AEW Invasion. Maybe we see Jon Moxley, right? Jon Moxley's just lost the AEW World Championship. Maybe he's absolutely livid, and it wouldn't take much to have Jon Moxley cross state lines, as it were, and then come over to Impact Wrestling. I'm sure he would love that. Maybe we see the flip side of it. Maybe we see an Impact invasion of AEW going forward. You've got two promotions facing off across two TV networks. It's just something we haven't seen. It's just something we haven't seen. When we've seen this invasion storyline before, and again, we don't know it's an invasion storyline, it's just a working relationship, and as far as we know at the moment, all we know is that Kenny Omega is appearing on Impact on Tuesday. So this is just hyperbole and me trying to sort of think what could happen in the future, but we've seen the invasion storyline before. We saw it with WWE and WCW and ECW, the alliance. It didn't work. It wasn't done well. It could have worked. It wasn't done well. The issue with that one was that WCW and ECW legitimately were closed and WWE owned them. It wasn't like two promotions feuding over two networks. Impact tried to do it before with the whole GFW, Global Force Wrestling deal with Jeff Jarrett. They did the whole invasion, kind of. It felt like Invasion Light when they did that. Nevertheless, it was an outside force coming in trying to take over the company. what we haven't seen when it comes to an Invasion, we haven't seen two legitimately different promotions facing off and having invasions across two separate TV networks. You've got Impact on Access TV, you've got AEW on TNT, and they're legitimately doing crossover with the likes of Kenny Omega on Impact. We haven't seen that before. That is a legit first-time deal in terms of modern pro wrestling. And I think it's interesting. I know people will say, what about Raw and SmackDown? I mean, separate promotions, separate companies, not brands or anything like that, separate promotions. So I think going forward, Kenny Omega, he's going to be making appearances for both AEW and, importantly, Impact. I think Impact's going to continue to get plugs on Dynamite going forward. AEW is going to get talent, I think, from Impact as well. Hopefully, when it comes to Impact, we see a lot more of Kenny Omega on Access TV going forward. Possibly some matches in store inside of an Impact Wrestling ring, inside of the Impact Zone in 2021. Again, we don't know if Kenny Omega was there last week, since their content was already taped. It's a possibility, but I don't think that's the case. I'd be stunned if that didn't get leaked. Nevertheless, they could be filming stuff now, or at the very least, they will be filming stuff in the new year. So really excited for Kenny Omega to show up in Impact Wrestling. Really excited about this relationship and what can happen. Anything is possible at this point. Absolutely anything is possible. So I'm super, super excited for that. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on Kenny Omega coming to Impact Wrestling on Tuesday? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chatting about AEW, Impact Wrestling, WWE, just all pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to leave a comment below and I'll do my best to respond and reply. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. If you're excited that Kenny Omega is coming to Impact Wrestling, smash a like on that like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.